Hello, everybody. And actually, before I start off, this is actually Texas Tuesdays number 8 live here with Matthew Miller. Uh, Today, we will be talking about the Big 12 wide receiver rankings, Big 12 special teams rankings, and we will get to that really quickly here. Let me just change this. And a couple other things to get to because Texas actually had the last week we've gotten a big time recruit here in Colin Simmons. So again, welcome in to everybody. Settle in, settle down. But before you do that, can you please hit that like button? Please subscribe down below. It really helps out the channel. Thank you guys very much for doing that. It's always nice to have you guys with us here on Texas Tuesdays live here at the Voice of College Football, Mark Rogers TV. So thank you guys for that. Again, Texas lands a big fish in five-star defenseman from Duncanville, Colin Simmons. He chose the Longhorns over LSU and Miami, and it's a big get, guys. People talk about Texas being back. Well, this is a part of it right here. Texas has to land these guys, has to develop these guys, and these guys have to play well for the University of Texas. We have not had a five-star defensive end like this since Jackson Jeffcoat in 2010. That is the last guy that we've recruited to this degree, and it's huge. If we can keep him committed and get him enrolled and play well, that is a gigantic get for Texas. And I do think he will end up on the 40 acres. I don't think he'll switch at this point, especially with someone like Kobe Black being predicted to come to Texas at cornerback. That's another five-star kid. It's another big get that we could have. This kid's a freak. He's got great athleticism. He reminds me, honestly, of like an Isaiah Simmons type build, but obviously a better pass rusher. Isaiah Simmons could play all over, but he wasn't a very good pass rusher. I think this kid's going to be a fantastic pass rusher. He had 22 and a half sacks last year at Duncanville High School. That's insane for a high school kid to have 22 and a half sacks. Absolutely insane. So it's a great job by this Texas staff. It's a great job by Jeff Banks, who was the lead recruiter here. So they finally got someone on the defensive line that is a bona fide scrub, or not scrub, but bona fide star. We have no offense. We've had scrubs in the past. This guy is not going to be that. So really big get here by the Texas recruiting staff. Really big get for the Steve Sarkisian and all the coaches as well. So there we go on that. Today, guys, we will be talking about wide receiver rankings and special team rankings. I will also get to breaking down TCU and Iowa State games. That will leave next week. We will dive in. We'll do linebackers and secondary rankings in the Big 12. We will also do, and those will be separate, and we will also do the last game of the season, Texas Tech. After that, the next week, we're going to do the defensive line rankings, and then I'm going to give you my predictions since that will be the last week before the season starts, which is crazy to think, guys, before that Rice game kicks off. We probably won't dive deep into that when that happens because, again, it's Rice. It's not needed to dive deep into that game, in my opinion. So we're going to talk about what I think the Big 12 rankings will be. We're going to plug in these what I've ranked so far, these teams, and throughout. Like I said, we've ranked head coaches, quarterbacks, running back room, wide receiver room today, special teams room today, and then the defense will come in the next 2 weeks. We will plug that in. We'll see what happens, like what the rankings are, or the formula thinks the rankings will be for the Big 12, and then I'll also give my own personal rankings. We'll see if they're close. I don't know. I can tell you right now, the formula is going to have the same number 1 and number 14 teams as I do. I'm going to have Texas at number 1, guys, and I'm going to have Cincinnati at 14. Cincinnati's god-awful. Cincinnati finally today, when we jump to the list, doesn't have the worst set of wide receivers, and they doesn't have the worst special teams in the Big 12. Actually, special teams for them is a bright spot. Wide receiver rankings, they only don't have that because of what happened at Iowa State, and we'll get into that as well. But let's jump into this, guys. So wide receiver rankings into the Big 12. Obviously, I have Texas going number 1 on multiple of these, and it's going to be no different here, guys. I'm sorry to tell you, but this Texas team is going to be number 1 again in the wide receiver room. And, guys, they have to be. You know why we have to be number 1 in the wide receiver room? Because we bring back everybody and we add to it. We bring back Xavier Worthy, who had 760 760 receiving yards last year and 9 touchdowns. He did this with a broken hand. I think he's going to be better this year. I can almost guarantee that. Next up, we have A.D. Mitchell, who I think is going to show people why he was such a highly rated recruit at Georgia, but also why Georgia fans were high on him. They always said if he could stay healthy. Well, if he stays healthy, guys, I think he's going to be great because he played in 5 games last year and had 134 yards in those 5 games. 134 yards and 3 touchdowns in 5 games and played very well in the college football playoff. I think he had a touchdown versus TCU, and then he also had a touchdown versus Ohio State. Next up, we bring back Jordan Whittington. and Jatavian Sanders. Jatavian Sanders, in my opinion, is the second best college tight end in the country. I think he's the best overall pro prospect. I think he's even better than Brock Bowers. I think he'll show that at the combine. I know people think that's crazy, but we'll see this year. I think he's really going to show out. And on top of that, at the depth-wise, you have Casey Kane, Isaiah Nayer, guys like that. I mean, this wide receiving room is loaded. We have multiple other guys that I didn't even mention. So they're number one for the obvious reasons. Next up might surprise some people. Maybe it won't. Next up, I got Texas Tech at number 2. Texas Tech brings back 8 of their 9 best receivers. That's insane to me. Their best receiver probably is either Jaron Bradley, who had 740 yards last year, or over 740 yards, and he averaged 14.6 yards per catch, or it was Miles Price, a little guy in the slot that I really like. I think those are the 2 best. And then you have Baylor Cupp at tight end, who's very good as well. So that Texas Tech is my number 2 wide receiving room. Kind of surprised me. I mean, bringing back 8 of 9 guys on your team in that room, you got to be in the top 3, in my opinion. This is where it kind of gets iffy, guys. You're going to see a lot of transfers, a lot of guys that don't have a lot of experience. So it's going to be very interesting to see here. I think 1 and 2, again, just like most of these rooms, I think there's a debate, usually 1, 2, 3. To me, there's a debate between 1 and 2 a little bit. Honestly, I think Texas has a much higher upside. We have 3 to 4 guys in our room that are going to play in the NFL. Right now, I think Tech maybe only has 2. So it's going to be interesting. But number 3 is going to surprise some people. It's going to be TCU. TCU loses Quentin Johnson last year. I think he's going to have a phenomenal year for the Los Angeles Chargers. He's a stud. They relied on him a lot. He was only a 1,000-yard receiver last year. And you bring in a guy that has that type of body type, or you have him there, Savion Williams. He had 392 yards last year and 4 touchdowns receiving on 29 catches. So year, I think he can take that next step and fill in for Quentin Johnson. Or as a TCU fan, you're hoping he can do that. You also bring in J.P. Richardson, who transferred from Oklahoma State and was, I believe, their 4th or 5th leading receiver there. So I think he'll help out. I think he'd be your number 3 wide receiver at TCU, because I think this next guy has the chance to be a Jamison Williams type. And what I mean by that is a guy that didn't fit in at his current roster because he has a lot of talent, but there's a lot of guys in front of him that play better for whatever reason in practice, have just as much talent, or a combination of the two, and that's JoJo Earle. JoJo Earle only had 155 yards receiving last year and 2 touchdowns, but I think this guy's going to thrive in Sonny Dykes' system. I think he's going to have 700-800 yards receiving at minimum. I would not shock me if he puts up 1,000 yards. I think he's going to return 1 or 2 kicks for touchdowns this year. Sonny Dykes caught him the most natural kick returner they've ever had under him. So I really think he'll do a good job. And then us Texas fans know this guy, and a guy that for whatever reason just can't produce at the level we think he should. He had 245 yards last year, 4 touchdowns, and that's Jared Wiley. Jared Wiley should be much better than he is. 100%. The guy's a freak. I believe he's 6'7", 6'8", 260. He's basically like Aaron Judge, but at tight end. He should be dominant on the football field, and he's just not. I don't know why, but he should be. Next up, we have a surprise here, and the first newcomer to the Big 12, welcome him in, UCF. And the more I look at this roster, guys, the more I like it. UCF brings in Javon Baker, 56 receptions, 796 yards, 14.2 yards per catch, 5 touchdowns. Kobe Hudson, 641 yards, 6.4 yards per catch, 7 touchdowns. And Xavier Townsend only had 127 yards. Those are the 3 best wide receivers. A couple of those guys were actually transfers that came in last year. And then probably the 3rd or 4th best tight end in this conference, Alec Collar, 22 catches, 275 yards, 1 touchdown. I think he'll have a better year this year. I really like this room. I think this room has a lot of upside. Honestly, you could have them over TCU because TCU doesn't have the type of stats, but I believe they have higher end talent in that room. But I have UCF at number 4. Next up, a team that I debated to put a little bit lower, not much lower. I actually, between 5 and 6, I juggled back and forth a lot, but that's going to be Oklahoma. I didn't want my bias to get in the way, honestly, so I bumped them up 1. I had them at 6 originally. I moved them down or moved them up to number 5. They have Jaleel Farouk, who was the best wide receiver last year, other than Marvin Mims, who is not there anymore. He's with my Denver Broncos. I think he will be very good in that system under Sean Payton. Jaleel Farouk had 466 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. Next up, you have a guy that's very talented, and I like, but he cannot stay healthy. He can't stay on the field, and that's Andrell Anthony from Michigan. He's a transfer. 114 total yards last year, which isn't very much. Or no, sorry, only 80 yards last year. He averaged 11.4 yards per catch, 1 touchdown. And then Drake Stoops, Mr. Reliable underneath. He always gets on the Big 12 fans' nerves because he's annoying. He's a good quality slot receiver, but he's very annoying. And they bring back an old face in Austin Stogner, who transferred back from South Carolina after transferring out. So that's a very good job for getting him back in. I think we'll have a good year. He had 210 yards receiving with South Carolina. I expect those numbers to be bumped up in Oklahoma, especially under Jeff Levy's system, which I believe utilizes the tight end better than Shane Beamer did at South Carolina. Again, next up is this team that I had at number 5, bumped down to number 6, another newcomer in the Big 12. It is the BYU Cougars. You have Chase Roberts there that had 357 total yards, 3 touchdowns. Keanu Hill was good with 572 yards, 7 touchdowns. Cody Epps, 459 yards, 6 touchdowns. I forget the wide receiver's name, but he was drafted by the Los Angeles Rams. He was their best receiver last year. I believe his name is like Kaliano Punu. He's played pretty well at the Rams. I expect him to make the roster. That's the guy that they'll miss the most. And then they're tied in. Pretty solid. Isaac Rex, 320 yards, 6 touchdowns. They used him a lot. And I have them as the 6th best wide receiver room in the Big 12. I will get to your guys' comments after this team because this will put us right through the halfway point of these wide receiver rankings, and that is going to be Kansas. This is where it gets hard, guys. I believe the top 5 or I believe the top 6, honestly, are in the correct order. And you can debate maybe one spot up, one spot down for each of them. This is where it gets hard, 7 through about 10 to 11, and then it drops off again. But number 7 is Kansas. I really like the top end talent here. The problem is they legitimately have no depth. When you go down the depth chart, guys, you can type this in. Go 2023 Kansas depth chart. And I believe it's Overlords or something like that, ourlordsdepthchart.com or whatever. And when you type it in, it tells you like their top 3 wide receivers, and then it gives you 4 and 5. They don't have any other wide receivers listed after, I believe, 5 or 6 guys, which is insane. So if you get 2 injuries, this wide receiver room is going to be dusted. It's going to be not very good, but I have to trust it because I really like this guy in Lawrence Arnold. 716 yards, 4 touchdowns, 16.3 yards per catch. I believe he's an Isaiah Nayer type. If you're a Texas fan, a big, strong guy that can go up and get the ball, but can also stretch the field. I really like him. Then you have Quentin Skinner. He had 440 yards and 5 touchdowns. Luke Grimm, 623 yards, 6 touchdowns. And then a guy we don't really like at Texas because he caught the, I believe, winning touchdown versus us or winning 2-point conversion in Mason Fairchild at tight end, 443 yards and 6 touchdowns. So I like Kansas. I just don't like the depth there. The top end talent is definitely there, guys. If they had any type of depth, honestly, I probably would have put them at about 5. But with no depth, I had to drop them down to number 7. We're going to jump into these comments real quick. Jeremy Garland, I appreciate you for coming in. You're new here. Can you please hit that like button? Please subscribe down below. We are here every Tuesday, guys, at 7:30. I come in a little bit late just to get your comments flowing. I know there's a Nebraska show going on, so we don't have as many people on there. Some of them are over there, but we're here every Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern time. We're going to be here after every game on Saturday as well. And Tuesdays in the season, I will be breaking down that opponent that week of Texas. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Too much gravy for my biscuits, Texas mid. That's fine. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Troll my team all year if you believe we're mid. Come in here and make fun of me. I don't care. I just want you guys here. I love talking football. Alex Martin says Texas will win the Big 12 and the best in the SEC. Mark my words. And be best. Okay, I don't know about that. And be best in the SEC. Mark my words. UGA over. Okay, we got a troll in here. Sorry. Ed Rogers, he's no Jamison Williams. I don't believe JoJo Earl will be as good as Jamison Williams, but I believe he has that type of talent. I don't think he will because, again, Jamison Williams went from Ohio State to Alabama. He's going from Alabama to TCU. But I do think he will have that type of effect. I think he will be able to help TCU stretch the field. That is, JoJo Earl will be able to do that. And I think TCU will be better actually going downfield because I think you're going to have 2 threats this year, not just one like you had with Quentin Johnson. I think you'll have Savion Williams, and I believe you'll have JoJo Earl. Obviously, I don't think either of those guys, if Sonny Dykes right now, if you sat him down and said, I'll trade you Quentin Johnson for those 2 guys, he'd probably make the trade because I believe Quentin Johnson is a freak. But I think you have multiple weapons that you can use downfield this year instead of just one. David Lane says longer. Man, I can't get that up there. David Lane said the Longhorns have got the position and probably most locked up like China Joe. Okay. Hook 'em. No politics, David Lane. No politics. Hollow Bones, you aren't ready for the SEC. That is fair, Hollow Bones. I never said we were. We're playing in the Big 12 this year, and that's why we're breaking down the Big 12 wide receiver rankings. So we're going to go jump back into it. Number 8, we have the Houston Cougars. Unfortunately for them, they lost Tank Dell. And Tank Dell is a stud. He's going to do well with the Houston Texans. if you watch the tape of him in the preseason or on the practice field, he gets tons of separation. Had over, I believe, 1,100 yards receiving with them. He's an absolute stud. He had like 15 touchdowns with him as well. They do bring back Samuel Brown, Matthew Golding, and Joseph Manjack. All those guys combined for about 1,200 yards receiving and 12 touchdowns, so that's pretty good. And then Matt Burns, the tight end, kind of underutilized, actually very underutilized. 4 receptions, 50 yards, 1 touchdown. I have them ranked number 8. I think they'll be decent, not great. And honestly, we're starting to fall off a cliff here, guys, because next up we're going to talk about a wide receiver room that just isn't that good, and that's Oklahoma State. You have Jaden Bray, who has 54 yards last year, 0 touchdowns. You have I can't even say this. Deshaun. I don't know if he's spelling it with a Z because it's cool, or I don't know why. It's either Deshaun or Deshaun. I'm not sure. But he was very good with Washington State last year. Very good. He had 602 yards, 5 touchdowns, 11.8 yards per catch. I think he's going to have a very good year with Oklahoma State. I think this is going to be their number one weapon. And if he can stay healthy, I think Oklahoma State can at least have a decent offense. If he's not healthy, guys, it's going to be very hard. I also like Brendan Presley. He had 813 yards. He was their leading receiver last year and 2 touchdowns. So those are your 2 studs, honestly. And if one of them gets hurt, you're going to have a lot of issues because I have the feeling the other teams are just going to double team the other one if one of them gets hurt. Tight end, you have a transfer from UMass and Josiah Johnson. Honestly, not very great here. 24 receptions, 168 yards, 0 touchdowns. Just not a great room overall. Number 10, you have Baylor. You got Ketron Jackson Jr. from Arkansas. Again, okay, 277 yards, 17.3 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns. Hal Presley is back for Baylor. And then Monterey Baldwin, I do like. He had over 500 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. And they bring in North Texas tight end Jake Roberts, who I like. 394 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think he will improve with Baylor. I think he's honestly probably a top 4 or 5 tight end in the Big 12. Next up, we have Kansas State. And as we've gone further, guys, you've seen how most of these guys that they have transfers, but they don't really have anyone proven, honestly, and that's where we get to Kansas State. They lose Malik Knowles, who gave Texas fits, a lot of teams fits because he was a good returner, pretty good in the passing game as well. Keegan Johnson from Iowa transfers into Kansas State. He had 11 yards last year, guys. I don't know what he's going to do at Kansas State. I have no idea. Next up, you have RJ Garcia, only 70 yards last year for them. And then Phillip Brooks is the big guy coming back, 43 receptions, 587 yards, 4 touchdowns. I think that's going to be obviously your most proven commodity and who you're going to have to rely on in the passing game. But I honestly think this team is going to be a more running the football team, especially you bring back a great offensive line. I had them ranked as the second best offensive line in the Big 12. You bring back everyone on that offensive line, bring back the best offensive lineman in Cooper Beebe, and you bring back another guy here, tight end, good blocker, but great pass catcher, may lead the team in receptions and yards. They may play in Iowa State more of offense this year with tight end centric with Bennett Sanat, 447 yards, 4 touchdowns. So I have them ranked number 11, guys, in the wide receiver rankings. Number 12, West Virginia. They lost a lot, guys. They lost Sam Brown and Bryce Ford Wheaton. I like both of those guys a lot, especially Bryce Ford Wheaton. He was very good at making contested catches. And they have Cortez Barham or Bradham back. Yeah, Barham back at wide receiver. 147 yards, 0 touchdowns. Honestly, not much there. The guy they're going to rely on is a North Carolina State transfer. North Carolina State transfer is going to be Devin Carter, 16.2 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. He'll definitely be the number 1 option if he can stay healthy. And then you have Jeremiah Aaron, who's also coming back, but he only had 124 yards last year and 1 touchdown. And then Cole Taylor at tight end. He had 55 yards the whole season, guys. 55 yards, so not much to talk about there. And rounding up the bottom 2, Cincinnati. The first time on here, I believe they haven't been the worst team. Guys, and the only reason they're not the worst, because they probably are the worst room, is the quarterback situation in Iowa State. Let's jump into that real quick. Hunter Deckers is not going to play for this team this year. He's already been dismissed out of fall practice. On top of that, I just learned their running back has also been dismissed, or probably will be dismissed from fall practice as well. He was caught up in that betting scheme. So you're losing your starting quarterback and starting running back a month before the season starts. That's the only reason I have Iowa State 14 and Cincinnati 13, because this Cincinnati room lost everything. All these guys are transfers, and all these guys are transfers that didn't really play much other than this first guy, or second guy, sorry. Donovan Ollie's the only one in this room that didn't that played at all, honestly. He's from Washington State. He had 491 yards, 3 touchdowns. D. Wiggins is from Miami. He had 67 yards in Miami last year. Not much to talk about. Florida transfer Xavier Henderson had 410 yards. He started. He was pretty good there. Wasn't great. And then Chamon Mettire at tight end had 1 catch for 32 yards last year and 1 touchdown. So this Cincinnati team is garbage, honestly, all around, and they're really bad in the wide receiver room. Again, the only reason they're not number 14 is because of the quarterback situation. Rocco Becht, I don't know how he's going to do at quarterback for Iowa State, and I have no clue who's going to fill in at running back for Iowa State. So that is why Iowa State is the 14th worst wide receiver room in the conference. They lose Xavier Hutchinson, who I think the Texans got a steal of this in a 6th-round draft pick. They bring in Eastern Kentucky transfer Jaden Higgins, who had 757 yards and was second leading receiver on Eastern Kentucky. So I do like him. Dimitri Stanley comes back with 420 yards and 1 touchdown. And then Jalen Noel, 572 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then I put down 2 tight ends because they're going to be tight ends centric, just like I believe Kansas State will be. Easton Dean and Deshaun Hanukkah combined for about 400 yards and 6 touchdowns. The problem is, guys, they don't have a quarterback that I can trust. That's why they're 14. Honestly, if they had a quarterback, I would probably jump them up all the way to number 12. If Hunter Dekkers is healthy, guys, I would have them at number 12 and move West Virginia down to 13 and Cincy down to 14. I might even have them 11. I might even put them at knock Kansas State down from there. But with the quarterback situation, I had to put them at 14, and that's where they're going to be. Let's jump into these comments again. I hit the like button. Thank you, Ed Rogers, for that. Everyone else, please do that as well. Thank you, guys. Too much biscuits for my gravy. Texas will not win the Big 12. Book them. Okay, who wins the Big 12 if Texas doesn't win the Big 12? Let's put it on record. If you're going to say that, you have to give me a team that's going to do it. I know I've heard other people say, oh, Texas isn't winning the Big 12, and then doesn't give me an answer of who does. You got to give me an answer who does. Ed Rogers, will the refs cheat y'all for leaving this mediocre conference? It's very possible. I'm going to say this about Oklahoma, too. I believe last year I brought this up on with Mark in an interview. Texas and Oklahoma last year's opponents were called for, I believe, 3 or 4 holdings all year between the two combined. So, yes, that's not possible. The teams we played were only called for holding 3 or 4 times. So that means Texas, which got the most pressures in the Big 12 conference from their defensive line, got called for holding 2 or 3 times against them or on them. That's insane. That's not possible. If you ran a simulation, there's no way it would ever be that low. There's holding almost every play. You're telling me the refs only called that 3 or 4 times this season? That's insane to me. So, yeah, we're going to get stuff like that. I don't think there's going to be anything blatant. Like, you're not going to see touchdown catches being caught in reverse because that will be on tape. And Texas will not go lightly if that is on tape. But this other stuff that people don't pay attention to, which is the offensive line every play, I could definitely see some chicanery coming from the officials and from the Big 12 conference. I mean, guys, we have the Big 12 guy who was second in charge behind Brett Yormark talking about Texas just left for the money and Oklahoma just left for the money so they can lose to Kansas State. Instead of losing to Kansas State and Iowa State, they lose to Florida and Tennessee or whatever. I forget the exact quote, but he basically said that they don't like us. We know that. The funniest thing ever would be Texas versus Oklahoma Big 12 championship game chanting SEC. That'd be freaking hilarious, but I honestly don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Oklahoma's going to be in the championship game. I'm not going to make that prediction right now, but again, I have 5 to 6 teams in consideration, and they are one of them, but I don't think they're going to do it. The real MVP. I wish the host would make his thoughts about Cincinnati more clearly. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. If anyone wants to go look at Cincinnati's roster and tell me how that team's going to become any worse than 13th in the conference, I'd love to hear the argument. You have a bad coaching hire. You have a bad quarterback. You have bad wide receivers. You have a bad offensive line. I haven't got jumped in the defense, so I can't comment on that. But everything on the offensive side of the ball, at best, you could argue is 12th or lower. That's the best you get is 12th in the conference. The best. You're 13th at best, guys. You're 13th at best. I'm sorry, Cincinnati fans. I live in Ohio. I wish Texas was going to play Cincinnati so I could go watch them this year. They're not, and I root for Ohio. I like Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. But you can't. You're just going to finish 14th or 13th. I'm sorry. A team Honestly, before I jumped into these rosters, guys, I thought West Virginia was going to be worse than what I'm probably going to have them. And I thought Oklahoma State was going to be better than I was going to have them. Another team that kind of surprised me is UCF. I think UCF is going to surprise some people. I have them right now. If I just had to guess in my head, they're going to be finished top 4 in the Big 12. I really believe that. I think Gus Malzahn's system is going to give people fits. I like some of the parts. I like John Reese Plumlee with the wide receivers they have and the athleticism he possesses. I think he's going to be able to run for a lot of yards. So it's going to be very interesting. Like I said, I'm going to have Texas in the Big 12 championship game. The teams in consideration after that are Oklahoma, Texas Tech, Kansas State, UCF, and then I'm probably going to put Kansas. Those are 5, and then BYU is like the sneaky team. So that's 6 teams that I'm going to consider. Those are going to be my top 7 in some order. I don't know where I'm going to go from there, but we'll have to see. DeReal MVP, I don't understand why Cincinnati thought hiring a coach that was 1 game above 500 is a good idea. I don't know either. I thought it was very stupid. The only reason Scott Satterfield took this job is to save his ass. He was getting fired at Louisville if they did bad this year, and he knew that. So what he did is he took I would say a similar job. I'd honestly put Cincinnati and Louisville, since Cincinnati goes to the Big 12 or is in the Big 12 now, on the same level. And that's what he did. He jumped ship to go to a similar job to reset the clock. That's all he did. And I don't know why Cincinnati hired him. I personally would have gone the assistant route and got a hot name assistant because you could have got a better coach that way. I think Scott Satterfield, keep calling him Paul. Scott Satterfield at best at Cincinnati averages 7 wins. I believe that. I can only see Kansas State, Texas Tech, and Texas finishing in the top 25 is in the mid-12 this season. Okay, well, that's fair. I could see that too. DeReal MVP says Oklahoma should be added to that list. Honestly, guys, people are not high enough on Kansas. Kansas has either whatever, some sites have it listed, they either have the most returning production or the second most. Either way, it's top 2 in the country. You have Jalen Daniels, which is a top 10 quarterback in the country, and you have Lance Leipold, which is a top 15 coach in the country. This Kansas team is going to be good. If Jalen Daniels stays healthy, they're winning 8 games. They're going to win 8 games. I don't know. It's going to come down to Jalen Daniels' health, basically. That's what it's going to come down to. When Will says, I don't think Brett Venables can do it. I'm not going to hate on Brett Venables. He's had 1 year. We'll see what he does. He's a great defensive coordinator. If he gets fired at Oklahoma, he'll find a job very easily. You have a very middle American accent for a guy from Texas. I am not from Texas. I am from Ohio. I was born and raised in Ohio. I'm a Texas fan. Yeah, I am from Ohio. That's funny, though. DeReal MVP, especially the first 5 games. Oklahoma has a very favorable schedule. That is the reason they're going to win probably 9 games is my guess right now. Like I said, in 2 weeks, you'll get my full predictions on that. And right now, this is just spitballing, honestly, because I have broken down the complete offense, and we're going to get into special teams in a little bit. I haven't gotten into the defense yet. I already know where this is going. No, I didn't go to school there. I wish I would have went. If I had enough money, I would have gone to school there. Don't have the money for that. For real, I think a 9-3 Oklahoma team gets them in the top. Oh, 100%. Oklahoma 9-3 gets in the top. An 8-4 Oklahoma team gets them in the top 25. Warren Childs jumps in with Fight On. And there's a couple more of you in here, so please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Go over to the Texas channel as well. If you're not watching it on there, hit the like button, subscribe. We're really trying to grow that channel because, like I said, I'm going to be here every Tuesday in the season breaking down that week's game. And then Saturday, I will be here after the game breaking that down, talking about it. You'll get my live real reactions. I'll be on after the game like 15 minutes max. I'm going to try to be on here like 5 to 10 minutes. I'm going to literally come down here, get my glass of water, my Texas cup, drink out of it no matter what, and you'll hear from me. Will says, oh my gosh, I just saw it. That is the charm. Yeah, it's very easy schedule, Will. Oklahoma cannot be a good team and win 8 games. They could they could be legitimately the 45th best team in the country and win 8 games. That's how easy that schedule is. So, yeah. What do you think about UCF and possibly beating Oklahoma? I think they could definitely beat Oklahoma. Right now, like I said, UCF to me is in contention for that second championship game spot. I'm going to have Texas there. And like I said, I'm going to either have UCF, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Kansas, BYU, or Oklahoma. That's 6 teams that I could possibly have in there to compete. I think I forgot Texas Tech. I think I said Oklahoma twice. Texas Tech as well. Texas Tech's just going to be interesting to me. I got to dive into the defense. I haven't gotten to that side of the ball yet. Oklahoma can finish 6-7, lose their bowl game, and still the top 20 in week 1. Sad reality. True. How many teams do you think go 12-0 with that schedule? I believe with Oklahoma's schedule, I believe 20 teams in the country go. I'm not going to go that. 15 teams in the country go. I think the top 15 in the AP poll could all go 12-0 with that schedule right now. I believe that. And I would extend that. I think 11-1. I think 25 teams could do it. It's a very easy schedule. Jackson, Matthew, what's your reaction to the Texas ranking? So people, and Jackson, I've read your tweets because I follow you on Twitter. Is Texas overrated for what they've done in the past? 1,000%. If that's what you're going by, then they're overrated. If you are saying they are overranked because of their roster, you are dead wrong. You are unbelievably wrong. People will say, well, what about the roster before? Guys, we haven't had this offensive line like this in 15 years. We haven't had a defensive line like this in 15 years. That is why we're ranked where we are, because of that. You bring back Kelvin Banks, who if he continues his trajectory, will be a top 10 pick in next year's NFL draft. You bring back Christian Jones, who up until last year, I would have told you was a liability, played phenomenal last year. He will play in the NFL. You bring back Jake Majors, a starting center that's been there for 3 years. You bring back Cole Hudson, who was a freshman last year, played okay. I expect him to get even better. He played as a freshman, played pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. You bring back Hayden Conner at left guard, who played pretty good, and I think he can get even better. This will be his second year starting. So this offensive line is very good. It's a top 10 offensive line in college football. On top of that, the depth you have that there. Devon Campbell, Cam Williams, Nada Ozuma. Those are 3 guys that were ranked very highly in the Texas recruiting class 2 years ago, or last year, I should say. This offensive line is loaded, completely loaded. We can legitimately have 2 guys go out, and I'd still feel confident. Kyle Flood, who does not lie. Like when you interview Kyle Flood, he tells it like it is. He told it like it was last year. He said we had 4 to 5 guys that you could count on. He said we have 8 starting guys. 8. So that means we could lose 3 guys, plug in 3, and we'd still be fine. That is very impressive and has not been done around here in a very, very, very long time. I want to get that very long time. And people will bring up Sark hasn't done anything. Look what Sark did at Washington. That team went 0-12 when he inherited it. 0-12. They were 5-7 and I believe 7-5. And then he left to USC. And guess what? With those players, Chris Peterson got that team to a college football playoff. Those were Steve Sarkisian's players. Do I think Steve Sarkisian is as good a coach as Chris Peterson? I do not, because that is yet to be proven. But do I think he could have won 10 games at Washington if he stayed? There's no doubt in my mind he could have won 10 games at Washington. I think he would have won 10 games at USC if he wasn't an alcoholic. But he is fine now. That is way behind him. And I think we're going to win 10 games this year. I think we'll go 10-2. That's my prediction. What happens to Sark if he doesn't win the Big 12 in their final year in the conference? He's still the coach. It doesn't matter. He will be the coach. I've said this. He is the coach as long as Arch Manning is there. Whether that means Arch Manning transfers, he will be fired. If Arch Manning goes to the NFL and he did not have the success he should have had with Texas, he will be fired. Or those are the circumstances. Those are the only ways he gets fired, guys. I think we're going to win 10 games this year. I think this is going to be a very dumb conversation going forward. Steve Sarkisian, I think, is going to be here for at least another 5 years, at least. I think he's going to have I think we're going to have a great year this year. I don't see a world in which we don't. Legitimately, the only way we don't is if we're just destroyed by injury. Quinn Ewers could get hurt, and I still think we win 10 games because I believe in Malik Murphy. I believe our starting running back, Jonathan Brooks, could get hurt. We'd still win 10 games because we have Cedric Baxter, Keelan Robinson, Jaden Blue. 2 of our offensive linemen could get hurt, and we'll win 10 games. The question I have is the defensive line. The linebackers. If the linebackers get hurt, 1 or 2 of them, Anthony Hill or Jalen Ford, we're going to have issues on defense. That's the only question I have. We need to recruit that position better. We have 3 to 4 guys I trust. After that, it is very thin. So if 2 injuries happen there, or even 1, we're going to be in trouble there. Oklahoma and Texas might be the new Kentucky and Missouri in the SEC. No. Texas next year, I think maybe it was you, Therapy. Someone said Texas will finish 10th in the SEC next year. No way in hell. Texas will finish in the top 7 in the SEC next year. I would bet on that. I think Notre Dame should be ranked ahead of Texas. You are a Notre Dame fan, Will, and I honestly don't know Notre Dame's roster that well. But if you go down roster for roster, Texas has a top 5 roster. I don't think Notre Dame does, and that's just go look at the talent, go look at the recruiting rankings, go look at NFL scouts and what they have to say. Go look at the mock drafts for next year. Texas has more talent than Notre Dame, so I don't believe that to be the case. Now your schedule, I think the schedule's about the same, honestly. Yours may be slightly harder. I know you play USC and a couple other tough games. We do play Alabama. That will be an interesting game, fun game. I can't wait for that, but we'll have to see. Let's see. Therapy. Rowan Phillips, TBF, Kentucky, and Missouri are up and down like the rest of the middle of the pack teams. Yeah, 100%. I think, honestly, Texas' goal should be to finish, like I said, 7th or higher in the SEC next year. If they finish 7th, I think that's perfectly fine in your first year. I have no problems with that. Guys, we are going to jump into the special teams rankings. It's going to be very quick because I know you guys don't really want to hear it. That's why I'm not even going to name the kickers and punters, but I basically did. If you had a returning kicker, returning punter, and they were good, that's why I ranked you high. If you didn't, I ranked you low, and we're going to jump into that real quick just because no one wants to hear it. I did not have Texas number 1 in the special team rankings. I had TCU number 1. Number 2, I did have Texas. We bring back Bert Auburn and the punter as well. So that's why I have them there. Cincinnati is 3, the highest they will ever be in any of these rankings. UCF is 4. Let me get that up there. UCF is 4. K-State in the special team rankings is 5. Oklahoma is 6. Texas Tech is 7. BYU is 8. Oklahoma State is 9. Kansas is 10. Houston is 11. Iowa State is 12. Baylor is 13. And then rounding up the pack is West Virginia at 14. I had to do that, guys, real quick because, again, if you guys haven't been here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank each room. I'm going to average that out. I'm going to have rankings for that. Basically a prediction without my influence. Well, a little bit of my influence, but not all of it. I basically did it by stats of where I think the Big 12 will finish. And then I'm going to have my own list of where I believe the Big 12 will finish. We'll see how close they are. They may be pretty similar. They may not. I can tell you right now, it's going to be Texas at number 1 and Cincinnati at 14. I don't know about the rest. We'll have to see. They may have someone jump up that ranking may have something a lot higher than I do. I may have something a lot higher than it does. So we'll have to see when we get to it. We will jump into the TCU breakdown and also the Iowa State breakdown in a second, but I'm going to jump into your comments again real quick. Will UT be the best team in Texas? I mean, let's see. UTSA, yes. Houston, yes. Baylor, yes. TCU, yes. Texas Tech. The only question is Texas Tech. Texas Tech could win the Big 12 championship. That would not shock me. Texas needs to get there. I've said that the whole time. It would suck if they don't win it, but they need to get there. That's my goal for this year, is getting to the Big 12 championship and being 10-2 when we get there. If we do that, we've succeeded, in my opinion. So we'll have to see from there. I don't know. UTSA might be the next group of 5 team to make the playoff. That is true, but the problem is, guys, we beat Louisiana, and Mark talked about this, I believe, yesterday. With Corey, because the AP rankings. We beat Louisiana at the opening game of the season when we went 5-7 in Sark's first year. That Louisiana team ended up being ranked like top 20 in the country, and we beat them by 3 touchdowns. We were 5-7. So they may be the best group of 5 team, but they're not better than Texas. They're just not. Even if we go 7-5, we're better than UTSA. The only team that could possibly be better than us this year in Texas is Texas Tech. Baylor isn't going to be as good as people think. Just because you have Dave Aranda and you won the Big 12 2 years ago, you're not going to be that good this year, in my opinion. Wet blanket. Kansas State gets no love. I have them winning the Big 12. I think they could win the Big 12. There's no doubt. Deuce Vaughn and Malik Knowles are big losses on the offense, but you bring back your offensive line, and it's the second best offensive line. In my rankings, I had them second, right behind Texas. So I think they definitely have a shot. Like I said, they're one of the 6 or 7 teams that can win this conference. But we'll have to see. I keep switching my mind on them. We'll have to see with them. Will Howard is the iffy part. To me, I think he'd be as good as Adrian Martinez. But again, Adrian Martinez had Deuce Vaughn. This team doesn't have Deuce Vaughn. It has Treshaun Ward from Florida State and DJ Giddens, I believe. is the other guy. I like him a lot. I think he reminds me of Deuce Vaughn. He's a little bit bigger, or he is bigger, not a little bit, because Deuce Vaughn is very short, but he's not Deuce Vaughn. And speaking of Kansas State, a team that is also purple, guys, and we're going to talk about them because we have to, guys. We have to. Texas. I have right now, I believe, let's see, we have 3 games left. So I have them 6-1, guys. 6-1, and this is one of their biggest road games of the year. TCU. I'm going to have them playing TCU. Let's break it down for you right now. TCU went 13-2 last year, 9-0 in conference. They averaged 38.8 points per game, 9th in the country, a lot higher than I thought they'd be. And then their defense honestly wasn't as good as I thought. 29 points per game, 91st in the country out of 131 teams. They're 118th in returning production out of 131 teams. That is not very good, guys. That means only 13 teams are behind them in returning production. Some of their big losses: Max Duggan, over 4,000 yards total and 41 touchdowns. Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, cornerback, very good for them, caused a lot of havoc. Wide receiver, really no need to explain how good this guy was. Quentin Johnson led the team in receiving, over 1,000 yards. And then you lose your 2 best running backs in Kendre Miller and Amari DeMarcado. Over 1,500 yards between the two of them, almost 2,000 actually. And then linebackers D. Winters is second in sacks and tackles for loss. And then Dylan Horton was first in tackles for loss and sacks. So you lose your 2 best defensive players in the front 7. They did keep linebacker, who was probably their 3rd best defensive player in the front 7, Johnny Hodges. He led the team in tackles. And you returned Bud Clark, who was first in interceptions, and Josh Newton, who was tied for second with Travius Hodges-Tomlinson. They do add J.P. Richardson. I talked about him earlier from Oklahoma State. He was 4th in receiving for Oklahoma State last year. They also had JoJo Earl, who I also talked about. I think he'll have a very solid year for TCU. He was a 4-star out of high school. He's going to be very good in the return game. I think he's going to be pretty damn good in the receiving game as well. And they also bring in Avery Helm, who will be a starting cornerback for them from the University of Florida. Now, I have to do this because I think Texas is going to go 10-2, and I have them at 6-1 right now. Texas is going to lose this game. They are going to lose this game 30-27, and that moves them to 6-2, I believe, with 2 games remaining. That'll move them to 8-2 with 2 games remaining. And I just have to do it, guys. I think they're going to lose another game other than the Alabama game because that's the only other loss I have for them right now. So I have them losing to TCU on the road because I can't have them losing this game, guys. There's 0% chance they lose this next game. Like I said, I think they lose TCU 30-27. And that's what I believe wins that game is TCU versus Texas. Iowa State is the next team up. Iowa State last year went 4-8, 1-8 in conference, guys. They were 4-1 outside of conference. Or no, 4-0 outside of or 3-0 outside of conference. Sorry. They averaged 20.2 points per game, 114th out of 131, and they averaged the exact same given up on defense. 20.2 points per game, 18th out of 131 teams. They're 67th in returning production. Now, guys, this is before Jarrell Brock, who is their running back and their leading rusher last year, and Hunter Deckers are probably going to get kicked off the team or suspended the whole year or at least half the year, in my opinion, as Hunter Deckers has already been kicked out of fall camp. That probably puts them, honestly, in probably 90th, somewhere in the 90s in returning production. So they're going to even have even less returning production, and that's why when we get into the losses, here we go. Hunter Deckers, they got to put up for a loss. I think he's going to be gone for at least half the season, maybe longer. We'll see what Rocco Beck can do as his replacement quarterback. They obviously lose Xavier Hutchinson, who I talked about a little bit ago, with over 1,000 yards receiving, was very good, very underrated. They lose MJ Anderson and Orion Vance, 1st and 3rd in sacks and tackles for loss. They also lose first-round pick from the Jets, who's played pretty well in the preseason, Will McDonald V, 2nd in losses, 1st in sacks. So they just lose a lot, guys. On top of that, I had Jarrell. I literally just learned about this 15 minutes before coming to do this show. Jarrell Brock, I had as kept. He's gone too. So you're losing your leading receiver, leading a rusher, and starting quarterback. This team is not going to be very good, guys. They do keep Jerry Vaughn, who was the leading tackler on the team, but that's about it. They add Jaden Higgins, 2nd leading receiver at Eastern Kentucky, so I do like him. And Toby Okoli, he's from Auburn, doesn't really have any stats there because he didn't play much. Actually didn't play at all. And then middle linebacker is Zachary Lovett, transfer from Missouri. And again, no stats there. He didn't play at all there. So we'll have to see, guys. To me, this is the second worst team in the Big 12. The more I see it, the more I'm convinced of it. I think Cincinnati is the worst. I think Iowa State's second. And before going into all of this and reading about it, and obviously Hunter Dekkers and Joel Brock being suspended or maybe even kicked off the team definitely impacts that. If they were there, I'd probably have them as like the 11th best team, but I think they're going to end up being the second worst team. And then I think there's 3 teams set in stone now for me. Just reading this off, I have to put them as the 13th. I think it's going to be Texas at 1, Iowa State at 13 when we get to my rankings 2 weeks from now, and Cincinnati at 14. I just don't see it with Iowa State at all. It's going to be very interesting to watch them, especially with Matt Campbell at the helm. I think he'll be able to pull out 1 or 2 games that they shouldn't, but they're still going to be really bad. So that is it, guys, for my topics. We're just going to keep the comments going. Like I said, I have the wide receiver rankings down, the special team rankings down. I have TCU breakdown. Texas loses their second game. Probably going to be the only other loss I give them. It is because we have Texas Tech next week. I do think we'll beat them, but I'll have to dive deeper into that, and we'll come out with the conclusion next week. And then we talked about Iowa State. So let's jump back into your guys' comments real quick. I think that UCF beats Baylor at the bounce house in UCF's first home game in the Big 12. I don't disagree with that. Sandra Green, hook 'em. Thank you for being here. Hit that like button. Subscribe down below. Go over to the Texas channel. Hit that like button. Subscribe down below. Thank you guys very much. What TCU? How does Texas lose 2 games when you said the only question is linebacker? Mentality is the world for Texas, apparently. Hello, everyone. I have to. I'm sorry. I have to. Texas is going to lose 2 games. You know why? If it was just based off roster, they should lose 1. But as a Texas fan, I've been punched in the face enough. I have us losing 2, and this is going to be the second loss. I could be wrong on that. We'll have to see. But I think this team is 10-2, and this is where I found the loss. I think the other possible hiccups, I just don't see Kansas State beating us. They haven't beaten us with Chris Klieman at the helm. Even when we were bad, we've beaten them. So especially at home, that's hard for me to see. TCU maybe, Oklahoma maybe, just because it's a neutral site game. I don't know. We'll have to see. Which Texas players need to showcase Saturday for 2 deep? Justice Finkley, I believe, needs to have a big game. I believe Malik Muhammad could possibly – I don't think he could get in the 2 deep, but I think he could be our 3rd corner. Paxton, I think he could be because he's played very well, according to Sark. Let's see. Who else? I'm trying to think. Running back, I think is set. Offensive line. Maybe Devon Campbell. Maybe he jumps into the starting lineup. Maybe he surpasses like a Hayden Conner, but I doubt it. Those are 3 names that come to mind. We'll have to see. I think it's going to be very interesting, though. Maybe Arch Manning surpasses Malik Murphy. Arch has been playing much better, but I doubt it. So honestly, the only names that for sure come to mind that I think could jump into the starting lineup, Justice Finkley will be in the 2 deep, but I think he could possibly get in the starting lineup. And possibly Malik Muhammad could become the 3rd corner, maybe even 2nd. We'll have to see. Justin says, Texas Tech, my surprise this year. I've always liked their name and colors. Maybe. I do think Texas Tech will finish inside the top 6 of the Big 12. We'll have to see. I may have them in the Big 12 championship game. We'll have to see. Ethan Burke, too. That's a good one, Paxton. He's been showing out as well. Honestly, the defensive line is weird. Other than Baron Sorrell, I think there's a lot of guys that could jump up and down. So that's going to be very interesting to see. Ethan Burke definitely has the frame. He reminds me of like a J.J. Watt in the fact of how he plays. Obviously, I don't think he's as talented or is ever going to be as muscular as J.J. Watt unless he hits the steroids really hard. But I do think he can jump into that top 2. That's a good point, Paxton. I was rooting for Texas to beat Alabama last year, and they should have won if Ewers didn't get hurt. Honestly, if Hudson Card isn't hurt, I think we beat Alabama. I don't even think it would have taken Ewers. Hey, what's up? For some reason, I can't catch you live. You're all good, Paxton. That's why you can go back and watch this afterwards. Like I said, I'm here 7:30 Eastern time. Every Tuesday night, I'm going to be here after every game on Saturday, so hit that like button, subscribe down below. Paxton, we rank the wide receiver rooms. We rank the special teams rooms, which I skated through because honestly no one wants to hear that, but I did do it because it does matter. And then I broke down the TCU game and the Iowa State game. I was losing to TCU, so that's what we talked about. I also hit on Colin Simmons for about 3 minutes in the open and how big of a get he was. So that's what we talked about. If you have any interest, just go back and rewatch it because I'm probably going to be wrapping this up pretty soon. But like I said, guys, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be putting my predictions set in stone. I'm going to set them in stone 2 weeks from now in the Big 12 standings, rankings, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to give you the offensive player of the year in the Big 12, the defensive player of the year in the Big 12, and coach of the year in the Big 12. On top of my college football top 6, I'm going to do that as well. And then we're going to jump into the season and have a great season, hopefully. I'm worried about the secondary. Seems suspect. Is it Catalon or Crawford? I think Catalon will start. It would surprise me if Keaton Crawford beats out Jalen Catalon. I don't think it's suspect. I don't think it's suspect at the top. I trust Jalen Catalon. I trust Jaron Thompson. After that, it's going to be interesting. I trust the starting linebackers. It's going to be interesting depth-wise. The only place where we have great depth on the defense, honestly, 2 places: cornerbacks and linemen. We're great up front. We have 7 or 8 guys we can rotate. We'll be fine there. And cornerbacks, I believe in about 5 guys in that room. Especially with Malik Muhammad coming on, I would put him as the 5th guy. But yeah, at safety, it's going to be interesting. Linebacker is going to be interesting. But if we can be good at one of those position groups, you can have one weak position group on defense. You can have one. And if I'm picking one, linebacker is the one I want to be weak. I want to be great in the back, and I want to be great up front. So even if our linebackers aren't as good as we think they are, which I think they will be good because Jalen Ford's a beast, but our defensive line is going to be good enough to help those guys out a lot. I'm just hoping the safeties can come along because if we can't get pressure, we're going to need our safeties. And I'm worried we still might not be able to get pressure because we may not have those dogs up front for that. I think we'll be very good rush-wise against the run, but I don't know about versus the pass right now for the defensive line. I don't know if we're going to be able to get there. Other than Barron Straw, I have a feeling he's going to have a great year. But I just can't wait for football, guys. The weather's starting to turn a little bit. It's been where I'm at in Ohio. It's been about 70 degrees. You can feel it in the air. It feels great. I really cannot wait. Dependent Fanatic. Texas needs to play keep away, in my opinion, rely on the strength of the line of scrimmage and get physical. I don't disagree with that. That's the first time in a long time I could say we could rely on our offensive line and play keep away. But the problem is, Dependent Fanatic, we have really good wide receivers. So do you really want to neuter the offense by trying to play keep away? We do have a really good running back room as well. Honestly, whatever it takes to win, I don't care what we do. I just want to win football games. But I think, honestly, for us to win, I don't disagree. I think it would be smart of us to run and then set up play action and go deep with our big threats with A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. I think that'd be really smart. We'll see if we're able to do that. After the SEC, I've always enjoyed watching Big 12 football. It's fun, so I'm super excited for UCF joining the Big 12. Justin, are you a UCF fan, or are you from Florida and just like watching the play? Are you from the South and just like watching the play? What is your infatuation with UCF? I'm very curious about that. I don't get very many UCF fans on the channel, mostly Ohio State and Michigan fans, so that's very cool. Seems to me like the depth is already set for one. Depth Sark is looking for name Saturday. Who, in your opinion, needs to make a statement? Make a statement. I think Alfred Collins needs to make a statement. I think Alfred Collins needs to come out and dominate. I'm sick and tired of hearing about how talented that guy is, and then he's just in the games. I want to see him dominate. Let's see. I want to see someone in the quarterback room take over that second position, whether that's Malik Murphy or Arch Manning. I want to see them be great Saturday. Running back, I want to see someone explode. I want to see someone take that room by the horns as well. Like right now, I think it's Jonathan Brooks, but I don't 100% know. It could be Cedric Baxter. I want to see someone say, this is my position. You guys can have 30% of the carries, but I'm taking most of the reps. I want to see that as well. So those are some like Jonathan Brooks, Cedric Baxter, Arch Manning, Malik Murphy, and then guys, who did I say on the defensive side of the ball that I already forgot? But I want to see that. Oh, Alfred Collins. I need to see him explode and play great as well. Though I really love college basketball as well. UCF makes me sad. They need to build a basketball program. I think they will. I mean, they kind of have to. They're in the Big 12, and I think the Big 12 is the best basketball conference. And if they had UConn and Gonzaga, it won't even be close anymore. So I think they definitely will. I think UCF is honestly going to become a top 3 type team in football when Texas and Oklahoma leave with the newcomers in. Maybe top 4. I'm pretty sure they'll be in the top quarter of the Big 12, which a quarter now will be top 4. And then
I think they're going to be pretty good in basketball. I don't think they're going to ever be great, but I think they'll be an NCAA tournament team more times than they aren't. So I think that will happen for you, Justin. But it's been awesome with you guys as usual. Again, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time every day, guys, or not every day, every Tuesday, guys, for Texas Tuesdays live here with me, Matthew Miller, on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're here every Tuesday. It's really been awesome hanging out with you guys again. Congrats, Justin, for your team in the Big 12. Jelani McDonald. Yeah, Liano LaFou, I think, would be really good at the linebacker position if he could show up. We'll see if that happens. I think Jelani McDonald can be pretty good, but I just don't think he'll show out enough on Saturday. Big deal for UCF. Yeah, can you guys hit that like button, subscribe down below. It's been awesome again, per usual, guys. Again, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time every Tuesday here with Matthew Miller. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Go over to the Texas channel, do the same thing. It's been awesome. Hook 'em, guys.